Let's just say that the current meta of Shadowlands is Bursty. The World of Warcraft meta has changed many times throughout the years, from keybinding your abilities in vanilla to double healer warrior in the Burning Crusade. Many longtime players can remember back to Wrath of the Lich King, where it was known for its fast-paced meta and its moments with extreme burst. Now, if you ask most players what their favorite PvP expansion was in World of Warcraft, you may get varying answers. However, I think you'd be surprised at how many players would put Mists of Pandaria at the top of their list. And for those that didn't play MoP, at the time, there were some complaints that all classes felt very similar. Every class had some type of heal, almost every class had the ability to burst or one-shot, but the main takeaway for most players was that every class just felt strong. So many comps were viable, world PvP and dueling was alive, everything just kind of worked. Now, this is not to say that the expansion didn't come with any issues, but it seems to really stand out to so many players as the pinnacle of WoW PvP. Over the years, World of Warcraft has changed a lot. Each expansion carries a different playstyle, and as mentioned earlier, some good and some not so good. But if you can look back to some of the recent expansions, the launch of each expansion carries a common theme, and that is that classes come out the gate pretty busted. This is a theme in almost all expansions, specifically Legion and in BFA. Now, some expansions will have a couple of classes that stand out, but so far Shadowlands is looking to feature many new classes that we haven't seen perform well in quite some time. Now again, this is not to say that every class feels how it should, but my experience in PvP has been so refreshing, and this is the same feeling that many players truly miss. Now, with this theme of classes coming out the gates busted, every expansion goes through the same huge wave of nerfs. I'm constantly getting asked if Sub Rogue is going to get nerfed, or Stoops, what do you think about Marksman Hunters? Do you think Blizzard's going to nerf them? And my response is always the same: I hope not. Now, before you freak out, I want everyone to know that my main is the Warrior class, which by no means is a weak class. In fact, I believe the Warrior is one of the strongest classes currently in Shadowlands for PvP. But I have to say this now before I get accused of being biased. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like Sub Rogue's control combined with the burst isn't currently an issue in PvP, or that there aren't a few abilities or legendaries that are overtuned for various classes. But this is no different than any expansion. Azerite traits like Lively Spirit for Balanced Druids in BFA, or the artifact ability known as Strike of the Windlord for Windwalker Monks in Legion, just to name a couple. Shadowlands is simply no different. And when I say I hope not, I want players to realize what they are truly asking for. The Shadowlands beta was a great representation of what Shadowlands will be like in a couple of months. It was fast-paced, but nowhere near as bursty outside of a few trinkets that Blizzard has already addressed. This was due to the massive amount of stamina that players had when entering forms of PvP. Right now, our gear is nowhere near where it's going to be in a couple of months. Our versatility is significantly lower, and our overall health pools are just smaller. Of course, our damage is going to increase, but not at the rate at which our health will increase. This is why casters scale so well towards the end of an expansion, where you'll find melee classes generally perform better towards the beginning of an expansion. So what am I really getting at here? I'm not naive to the fact that some classes feel like they need to be addressed, but I want players to understand that the meta will naturally change on its own with gearing. The rated PvP season hasn't even started yet, and calling for massive nerfs on specific classes will only lead to a fast track back to BFA. Right now, I can confidently say that there are more classes that feel viable than there are classes that feel underwhelming. Of course, this will change over time as the meta develops, but rather than trying to bring down overperforming classes, I want to focus on correcting the issues that exist with underperforming classes. The mentality in modern WoW is always to try to nerf things, but I feel a lot of players do not understand the chain reaction that this creates. In typical Blizzard fashion, when you nerf several overperforming classes, other classes begin to stand out. Now from there, players will then begin to call for nerfs on those new classes that stand out, and I think you see how this becomes problematic. You then get to a place where almost everything has been nerfed and there are only a few classes that really perform well in PvP. And you can clearly see this by simply looking at the spec representation charts from BFA Season 3 and 4. I want Blizzard and the community to look at how we can bring classes up rather than bring classes down. Ideally, you want every class to feel strong and fun to play. You want your abilities to feel like they mean something, and honestly, you want them to feel good to press. This is how you mirror the MoP PvP meta. Of course, classes were designed differently back then, and I'm not sure if we can get back to a place like that in Shadowlands. But focusing on making weaker classes stronger rather than making the strong classes weaker creates a fun environment for all players. And although balance is important, fun has to be the priority in any game for it to be successful. Think about it. You can have a game be balanced, but if games are going to dampening every match, it's just simply not fun to play for the average player. and the average player is what really matters when trying to revive the WoW PvP scene, which personally, I think we're on the track to do so. Yes, the burst is a bit out of hand, but I don't want the developers to be discouraged due to players crying out on the forums about their performance in scrims or random battlegrounds. Those forms of PvP do not represent a controlled environment, and when playing in an environment that is not controlled, you just can't expect balance. Now I have to say this for those people who aren't able to follow, and I hate that I have to say it in the first place, but the community is just so black and white nowadays. I'm not saying certain classes do not need adjustments, but I don't want to see any class or spec get completely gutted for no reason. I can't stand when players say, "Good, screw that class, I hope it gets nerfed to the ground." Ask yourself this: have you ever gone into an expansion with a main in mind just to have it nerfed or be unplayable for the rest of the expansion? Have you ever spent hundreds of hours learning a class, farming your gear, just to have Blizzard drop the nerf hammer and have it be unplayable? I'm calling for frequent, small changes to both the overperforming and, more importantly, the underperforming classes so we can find a happy medium. I don't want the game to be balanced around how things are performing now, but more so when the meta stabilizes. We are still in the testing phase, and unfortunately we never got the testing we truly deserved on the Shadowlands beta. And now is the time for us as a community to think about how we can provide feedback on where the game should go. Personally, I think a fast-paced game is the most entertaining version of World of Warcraft PvP. I want damage to matter, and as a person who's played a healer for over 10 years, I don't want healers to feel like some supreme overlords where they never and can top anyone with a single heal. I want my decisions to matter, and I want my team's damage to matter, and I think the removal of PvP scaling is definitely a step in the right direction. The higher the damage, the more mana the healers will spend. The more mana they spend, the less often we head into dampening. And when burst is high, sometimes mana just doesn't matter. Now from a viewer perspective, some of my favorite BlizzCon championships to watch were those at the beginning of an expansion, Legion and BFA. It's fast-paced, exciting, and anyone could go down at any time. I think this is the best version of WoW. Of course, it's not the most balanced thing in the universe, but it's something that we can build off of. If we just nerf everything, the game is going to go down the same path it has for the past several years, and that is just boring. I think players will learn to adjust to the new fast-paced meta, and like all games, the meta is always changing, some for the better and some for the worse. I don't know about you guys, but I personally don't like a meta like BFA where mistakes are so forgiving. If you make a mistake, you should be punished for it, and it shouldn't take 10 minutes to do so. When I go through the forums, which by the way, I get why people don't go to the forums because it's something else. But I like to when trying to make these videos to get a better idea of what players are feeling. Some of the responses are just so misinformed, and they are never descriptive about what exactly needs tuning. Remember, this is the official place where Blizzard and the developers get their feedback on what should be changed. Players on the forums use words like exact revenge or without breaking a sweat. Be specific on what abilities you believe need tuning. And if you don't know the abilities of other classes, it's hard to take your feedback seriously, and to me, it feels more of a complaint than actual constructive feedback. And I suggest you learn more about other classes before calling for specific changes. Overall, I want to find a place in WoW where every class feels viable. A game where you see all classes like Demo Warlocks and Enhancement Shamans. A place where everyone enjoys their class and not just the select few. And I know this may seem impossible to some, but I believe with the suggestions I have made in this video, this is something that can become a reality. Anyways, this is my state of Shadowlands PvP, and I'm loving it so far. But more importantly, this is my official warning to the PvP community if you do not want a repeat of BFA.
Guys, how you feeling?
One word, excited.